much from the last time we talked, we pretty much that's pretty much what I've done. But we did something last week. We did a little impressions. We did our impressions of a big film last week, which was Guardians of the Galaxy. Now that we've had time to marinate on that, and before we get to your Get On Up review, now that we've had time to marinate on our Guardians of the Galaxy film experience, where are you a week out from that movie?
I like the film. I really do. I still feel like it was a little too long, and I still
How
feel
dare
like
you.
my favorite parts of the films were the little throwaway moments that I think mean so much in terms of who these characters are. All the scenes of Star-Lord losing himself to the music that he grew up in. All the scenes of Groot having these out of character moments where he is beautiful. Oddly enough, but really beautiful. The moment where he gives the little girl a flower, like moments like that. The scene, not to spoil anything, where Rocket is grieving in this way that's surprisingly like not played for laughs, and it's very endearing. It's one of the most touching moments in the movie. Those are the scenes that have really stayed with me, and I think that's why this movie is going to resonate. Because in addition to being a really awesome and visually gorgeous sci-fi action spectacle, it truly, truly is a movie with a lot of heart. And I think in that best way, it is a lot like the original Star Wars.
I think you're right. And as far as my impressions of the Guardians of the Galaxy a week out, I have to tell you that I have not been able to stop thinking about it. Literally, like, it's just, there's something that's pulling me back to going, I want to watch it again. And I want to keep watching it again and again. I think I found very little fault with the film. After being able to kind of marinate on what everything was, I've listened to the soundtrack for the last week. It's become part of my collection now. I've done that. I have also just marinated on certain things that have to deal with the story and with the movies, with the movie itself. So I'm looking at different. I was looking at different characters, different. Like you said, I was looking at the different characters and their relations and things like that. The way they related, like Groot did, and like Groot related to Rocket Raccoon, their relationship, just kind of marinating on all the relationships in the film were very good. I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I will say that there are a couple of things that I thought were lacking. And after thinking about those things, I will say that I wish, knowing some of the comics like I do, I wish that they had given Ronan the Accuser, the villain in the film, a little more, give him a little more to bite into, something for us to not like him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or make him a little more villainous, in the sense that we know what he wants to do, we know he's evil, but we never really get a sense of him.
Yes.
But I think, is it okay to say this? But I think he's overshadowed by the villain, the bigger villain than he is.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's kind of to its detriment, or to his character's detriment, because unfortunately, Ronan the Accuser is overshadowed by what will possibly be the villain for the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
And was it a bad move? No, I don't think so. I think it was fair. It was a fairly good move. I think we're just at a different place now that, unfortunately, because of the big reveal, I think that the other villains will suffer, and that's okay. I can deal with that. But that's a minor quibble, but with how much I love the film. I thought it was funny. I thought it was very touching. I thought everybody kind of gelled together very well. That was a really cool thing for me. All the characters gelled well together. I thought the story kind of just kept flowing. I didn't think it was too long at all. I thought it was over before it started. Yeah, that's how I felt about it. I just kept going and going, and I absolutely loved the film. So for me, my position hasn't changed. I think it's still a 5 out of 5 film. I think it's one of the best movies of the year, for my money. And I think it's. I think minus some of the swearing, I think it's still good for kids. Yep. I think, some of the swearing, it gets a bit much, but, that's neither here nor there. It's funny, it's original, and I have to say, for me, Guardians of the Galaxy, 5 out of 5, absolutely thought it was wonderful. You know what's funny is that I had I had somebody came up to me who knows me from the radio, things like that, and wanted to express his nerd anger at me about. He said, he told me basically, he said, gee, I don't want to watch this movie because it's not even the original Guardians of the Galaxy. I said, okay. I said, look. I said, you're right. It isn't, because the 1969 Guardians of the Galaxy were completely different. Other than Yondu, who's in the film, played by Michael Rooker, very different. He's actually part of the original 1969, but if you look at the new 2008 comics, they're missing a couple of members, but essentially this is the Guardians of the Galaxy. And in the comic, ironically enough, Tony Stark is a Guardian of the Galaxy as well in the comics. So there was he was angry with me, and I said, listen, do yourself a favor, just watch the movie. I think you really like it. So he got upset with me, like, this isn't really the Guardians of the Galaxy, because they remember the other Guardians from the 1969. When you pull out Guardians of the Galaxy #1, it's a host of different characters with the exception of Yondu, who is in the new film, but he's not a Guardian in that film. It's this whole new troop of guys. So, yeah, it was really funny that I would get approached by someone who was ticked off that it wasn't the one that he remembered when he was growing up as a kid. So, but yeah, I have to say, for me overall, Guardians of the Galaxy, without a doubt, best film of the summer for me, and possibly one of the best movies of the year for me. I loved it, absolutely loved it. So, I hope you come aboard the train of love.
I like this film a lot. I really do. But for me, when you don't have a villain that is as good as the heroes, I think that's a problem. Because I don't mind, certainly comic book movies, where the villain is so powerful that it creates not only a great threat, but it also kind of centers the movie. As good as Lee Pace is in this film, I don't feel like he ever really took charge of that villain.
No.
I feel like the makeup was doing a lot more work than he was.
Right.
With all due respect to him, because I like him as an actor,
sure.
But I don't feel like he really needed to just take charge of it. And I don't feel like he ever did. And I really felt like the heroes were always going to inevitably be okay because of that. I never really felt all that worried about them. I was worried about their emotional journeys, their individual emotional journeys. I love Drax kind of going through this, as limited as his intelligence is, he's going through this kind of existential thing of like, what am I going to do with my life? What is my mission? What am I fighting for?
Right.
Rocket having this identity crisis of, I'm the only one in the world who's like me, how much that sucks, and how he's got such a huge chip on his shoulder, and his best friend is a talking tree. And you have a talking tree who has has such
how do you prioritize that in your life?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and for Pete's sake, Groot is only able to express himself with 3 words, and that's his lot in life, his struggle to just express himself and allow people to know that he's more than just a tree. And then, of course, there's Star-Lord, who has a whole lot of baggage. Those aspects, what really drew me in, what I found to be really endearing.
And I think, not to delay the point here, but I think that was kind of the essence of the film, and the fact that I think that what it is that those problems with those characters were highlighted because and like I said, I'm not the filmmaker. This is just what I got out of the movie, but the problems with them as a team coagulating were more essential to the film than the villain. So what I think it was that as long as they gelled as a team, that anything is possible. When you watch the ending of the film, you see what I'm saying? When they're standing there and they're facing Ronan the Accuser for the last time, that's what it kind of felt like. It felt like the actual villain wasn't necessarily Ronan. The villain was themselves and them working together. You see where I'm going with that?
I can respect that. I just don't think it's as compelling as it could have been.
Sure.
For me, this movie is like Star Wars without Darth Vader. I love the main characters. I love what they were going through. But, I mean, had the villain been as threatening, I think it could have been incredible. This has been such a great summer for movie villains with Koba. And not to mention the actor, name slipping my mind, the actor who played the original Old Boy in Luc Besson's Lucy. There's been so many great villains this summer, and I feel like this could have been one of them, and it just isn't.
All right. Well, I will give you that. Ronan did not get his due justice in the film. I will agree with you on that. But for me, without a doubt, Guardians of the Galaxy. If you've not seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it. It is wonderful. I loved it. I thought it was spectacular. The soundtrack is great. The story, I love the story with everyone in it. It was just, I should say, all the Guardians together and their story of gelling together as a team was phenomenal. It's on par to make over $800 million after its run. That's where it's moving to right now. So Guardians of the Galaxy for us, great film. Now, moving on to a new week, right? There's a film that opened up with Guardians of the Galaxy on the same weekend as Guardians of the Galaxy, and you, sir, went to go see it. And what was that?
I saw this disastrous bit of counter-programming from Warner Brothers, the second musical with characters breaking the fourth wall, and that is not Jersey Boys, but Get On Up, the story of James Brown.
Okay.
Gosh, I'm almost at a loss for words with this movie. My problem with this movie,
okay,
there's a few of them, but I mean, my biggest problem is that it takes the Tarantino approach in the sense that the story is completely skewed. The narrative is told out chronologically out of order. We have the beginning of the film last, the last beginning, the beginning at the end, etc., etc. It's all over the place. The movie begins in 1988, goes to 1968, then 1939, back to the 60s, back to the 30s and the 50s. It's all over the map. An interesting idea. It's certainly not the first musical to do this approach, of course, but the problem is you don't have any kind of momentum as to who James Brown is, what his journey is, even his skill set, how he even accumulated it. You have a movie that's so kind of dysfunctional, at war with itself, certainly tonally. Like I was telling you before the show starts, it opens up with one of the worst opening scenes of any movie this year. The opening scene feels like this unintentional comedy, this camp classic, where James Brown realizes someone took a crap in his toilet at his business, his workplace. In 1988, he's in a tracksuit, his hair looks terrible, it looks like he just got off the set of Rocky IV, and he basically takes out a shotgun and threatens everybody who's working for him and demands to know who took a crap in James Brown's toilet. He's always talking about himself in the third person. And then he breaks the fourth wall and starts talking directly to the audience with the shotgun in hand. And it's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. And the movie doesn't necessarily even redeem itself from that point. It just kind of goes on so long that eventually just kind of wore me down. It wore down my resistance because there are some surprisingly good scenes late in the movie. There's a cluster of good scenes. There's a really solid performance by Dan Aykroyd, of all people, who's wonderful in this film. Right. You don't often see Dan Aykroyd now. We right. rarely ever do. He's a wonderful actor, and he's solid in this film, and it's especially enjoyable when you consider that he did 3 movies with James Brown. So it's interesting to see him acting opposite an actor playing his old friend, James Brown. This is the new. Of
course,
film.
They're famous. Not just a little sidebar. That's his role with James Brown is famous in the Blues Brothers. Of
Blues
course,
Brothers
with
and
him and James Belushi
and Dr. Detroit.
Dr. Detroit,
yep,
right?
Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Detroit.
Yeah. So you get to the music numbers, which are very well done, the concert scenes, which are as good as you'd expect, because the actor Chadwick Boseman does a fine job of impersonating James Brown. It's a very good impersonation. The music scenes crackle, and we know how good the music is.
Sure. But
in terms of just being a movie about this man's life, it's not that every musical needs to be as good as the Buddy Holly story or La Bamba or The Doors or 8 Mile or Purple Rain. But those movies, you do have a sense of who this person is, and that's the core of it. This movie has no idea who James Brown is. Over the end credits, they're showing all these photographs of James Brown with all these famous people like Mick Jagger. And he looks so fun and so alive. And I watched those photos as
Sure.
the end credits rolled, and I thought, I want to see that movie. I feel like this wasn't that film. It doesn't really get to the heart of the guy. At one point, James Brown randomly slaps his wife around. There's no build-up to it. There's no explanation for it. The movie seems to want to tackle a very large life, and it just, even at 140-something minutes, it just does not have the time to cover this man.
Right. Now, why do you think that I often, as most nerds do, look at Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is one of my favorite go-to places to look at movie reviews. Why do you think this is garnering such high praise from most critics? What do you think is contributing to its high rating? It's at 77% right now.
The music is good, of course. People love the music. Even
the audience, they're like on par. The audience they're at 78%. They like this thing. What do you think? What do you think is it that they're seeing in this film? I mean, because I heard that there's a lot. They talk about a lot of his childhood and his the way he was raised, and they get into a lot of the dirty places, I guess. But yeah. I don't know because I haven't seen it. So what are people seeing here? I mean, if it's
when I was in the theater and people were walking out, they really were really getting into it in terms of the music. And I mean, the concert footage, of which there is a lot, is really electrifying because, again, it's James Brown. He's one of the biggest, most engaging of personalities. But I think people have to be honest and say, like, what does this film exactly have to offer? What does it tell us that's new? What